Because I want to get everybody on TV.
I thought that was my phone.
They'll be looking at your facial expressions today on television. We just spoke with Steve DeMeo and Jackie Izzo and Mayor Rob Palmieri. Obviously, a tough day, a tough Friday. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I want to start right out by saying we know that this has been going on, and Steve DeMeo just told us that he knew we were in trouble when the announcement was with Pereira made his announcement and all of the indictments, and he knew we were in trouble. That takes us back 6-7 months. Now we've known this has been falling to pieces at the very least since October, and he says this was falling to pieces since June, really since June. So I have to ask you guys, and I know we all are friends, and we're all. How do we ever believe another word that comes out of your mouths?
Well,
that is a question that the people deserve an answer to.
I agree. And I don't think anyone's trying to run here or to hide or to point fingers. Look, there's accountability, and we'll take accountability. But in the end, we've been talking to we had a meeting back in March with the governor's office about some concerns over the project, and have been doing our part right along to push them to do what they had to do. We knew there were issues after the indictments. We continued to work with the governor's office. At the end of the day, our job is securing the funding, which we did that. We delivered the funding to the region to make this project a reality. We can't get in there and manage the project too. We're not the ones who are going to be the construction managers and negotiate the leases and all the agreements. That's up to the SUNY Poly officials and the governor's office. So when we found out that there were problems, we continued to raise the red flags with the governor's office and SUNY Poly, and frankly, it fell on deaf ears until we got to a point where it was too late.
So if I can add to that, Bill, because we've had this conversation here in the studio a number of times. In fact, I remember Jeff raising the question at some point. This is my perspective. And again, nobody's looking to point fingers here, but we're trying to give people the facts so that they have a better understanding and appreciation for all of the events that took place and contributed to this decision. First and foremost, what we do as local officials here, whether they're business leaders, local development officials, and the elected officials, try to work together to identify opportunities, emerging opportunities. And we've talked for a long time. I believe in diversification here. So we don't want to lay all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah, I get that.
But so we looked at cybersecurity, at nano. These are emerging high-end technology opportunities, and we recognized that this is a chance for our community to grow in addition to what we already have, and went after that. Our job later was not only to advocate to try to get something done, but then to deliver. And we did that with the resources. You've cited this a number of times. When you look at the money that has added up here over time, even though a lot of it still is in the mix, whether it's the hospital, but that's not fake money.
No,
that
over
money
$1 billion.
That money is real. The money's real. So what the Assemblyman just said and what we talked about, and you know how I am always very careful in what we talk about with numbers and everything when we've talked about it here. Some of these guys like to inflate the numbers and get out there and make an announcement prematurely. In this particular instance, when we did see some of these areas and issues that rose that concerned us, as the Assemblyman said, we went to the governor's office. The county executive was on the phone with him. The Assemblyman and I met with the governor at the state fair. For a period of time that day to say, you need to focus on this yourself because we're really worried about this. And everybody kept saying, don't worry, we've got this, everything's going to be fine. And I think that's where the problem came in because of the events that unfolded, because of the corruption, because of the investigations, because of some of the other things, maybe the way the staff handled it, the timetable wasn't met. And I know there's another question being asked right now about, well, if this timetable was so sensitive, how is this industry going to sustain itself? Because things change. And that's a good question because markets are fluid. So we're hoping when you identify companies like this that they're going to position themselves properly to be able to adjust quickly as markets change. There's been a downturn at AMD and Malta, and people are concerned right now. So that's why diversification is the key. You got to be fluid when you're making decisions. You want to avoid another Kodak.
Tell me
remember Kodak?
Right. Well, GE, and
but the Kodak story is important because they had the digital technology and did not apply it because they were sitting on what they had from film, thinking they had a monopoly there and they were going to take care of this. And then Fuji and them just go and then run around them, and look what happens to all the people that work there and the communities that hosted it, like Rochester. And we want to avoid that.
I got to ask: is GE that a real deal? Is it still on the table? Is it going to happen? And if so, what are we looking at in jobs there?
Everything that we've been told is it's still a real deal. Howard Zemsky's going to be here today, the head of Empire State Development, to talk a little bit more about that and meet with the media after we have some meetings with him about our next steps here. They're in They are actually have made an agreement with a partner to do work in that facility. So that deal, as far as we understand, is moving forward. And the company spokesman made a comment last week to the paper that they're still committed to the project. So at this point, we believe it's moving forward, and we're going to do what we can to continue to push the governor's office and Empire State Development to make sure that commitment is fulfilled.
There was some of the. We've had some calls this morning and even last week as well. The idea that the governor let this kind of fall. Let it fail. Any truth to that?
Look, all I can say is what's happened over the last year. And from our perspective, back in March, we had a meeting with the governor's office to tell them about issues with the funding. We talked about the timeline and the failure to get the RFP out there as soon as quick as they could. We talked about the investigation. After the investigation broke, things really froze up on the governor's office and at SUNY Poly, which took even longer to move this thing forward. Edge went forward and started to do a lot of the work on their own, which was a risk to them to do, but they did it, and Empire State Development advanced money for them to do that afterwards. So we've been raising the red flags right along. You know, the governor hasn't said anything yet. He should. Yeah. That's an important thing. I think he needs to come out and be a leader and say what went wrong here and what he's going to do to address it. There's a community that's in the balance here and waiting for this thing to happen. Has been waiting patiently for a long time, and we've done our part. We're here. We face the public every day, whether it's in the grocery store or in our offices, on Facebook and email. We're there. We're not hiding.
And I don't mean to be...
No. I don't think you are. You have every right to ask these questions. The public has every right to ask these questions, and we're going to answer those questions, whether I have to go wherever I have to go to answer the questions. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is we really tried to do our part, first in delivering the resources, second in raising concerns with the governor's office about issues and with SUNY Poly about issues. But there's factors beyond our control here locally that really got this project off track.
How do you prevent from in the future? How do you prevent the big celebration before it's happened? I mean, you got a governor who likes to make big promises, and he was celebrating before the ship had sailed.
And that's why I've always said you have to approach these things cautiously. You can come out and say, this is a company that we've dealt with. They are interested in this area. There's a potential in this manner, and we'll work it. I heard Steve, as we were coming in, say that Zemsky believes in under-promising and over-delivering. And that's the way it should be, really, when you talk about the public, because there's a lot of perceptions. A lot of people don't have access to information and they have gut reactions, and I understand that. And that's what you always try to avoid. And you know that from experience that we've always had this conversation. That's the way I've always tried to model things personally, because you just can't guarantee anything when you're talking about companies. This is a capitalistic society. It isn't, socialism. So you can't tell a company or make a company do something. In fact, I even question some of the approaches. These are unorthodox, unconventional economic development incentives and measures that are being used right now to build a facility in order to attract a company. We always talk about the macro approach: lowering taxes, easing regulations, lowering energy costs. Those are things we need to work on. But in the interim, we have these other type of tech incentives that are moving right now. And I've heard you say this: if we don't take advantage of this, somebody else will. So we need to go fight for that. But it's still an uncomfortable environment in which to be in, because you're at every whim of not only the market, the global economy, but the company's decisions themselves.
So you guys have both gone forward, and you've gotten the funding for, I want to switch gears just a little bit, for this downtown hospital, this new hospital project. As a member of the public, I really wonder or if I'm Mohawk Valley Health Systems, how do I now trust that money's going to be there? You guys got it done. It's there. But how do I trust that it's going to come to fruition?
Well, the money's there. We went through a situation last year where the money was taken out of the budget. I don't know if the governor's office wants to repeat that scenario again this year. If it happens again, we're going to do what we can to make sure the money's there. But the money's there. The Department of Health has put out the request for application to the hospital, so they're going through their due diligence now, filling out all the paperwork to start to access that money, and that should start happening in the beginning of next year. So, there's a distrust, and we recognize this in government as a whole right now. You saw it in the presidential election. But the bottom line is that the people here, myself, the senator, the county executive, Mohawk Valley Edge, these are good people who are really trying to do what's right for the area. So we can all try and get together and continue to work together to make these things happen, or we can all just put our heads in the sand and go away.
Right.
But we're going to continue to try and make this happen because the bottom line is, I said it on Facebook this weekend, all we want to do is bring good jobs to this area.
Right.
That's the bottom line
Right.
for all of us, is to try and bring good jobs to an area of the state that has historically been neglected. We have a situation now in Albany where there is more state attention being given to the area. You see that in terms of funding. We have to continue to move forward to make sure that those deals and those promises are executed on. And I'm ready to call anyone out on the state level I have to call out to make sure that happens. There's things, like I said before, beyond our local control here.
Right.
But it's up to the governor, who's the leader of the state, who was here last August making promises to fulfill those promises
Right.
as the leader of the state who stood there and promised those jobs.
Joe?
No, I agree. I mean, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to. The concern I have a lot of times is that I welcome criticism and particularly if it's constructive. People need to present their opinion and provide input. What concerns me though sometimes is that we have a lot of purveyors of doom and gloom here that are highly critical without having information. And I think, look, you need to believe in the community. You need to continue to. We have a passion for the community here, and we need to work collaboratively to try to make things happen. And you're seeing that. There are talented people here. Whether you agree with them or you like them, people are working very hard and trying to make a difference here. And you run into problems. You get a setback like this. The question is, how do we proceed from this?
Yeah.
That's a true test of character, not only of the individual, but of the community. And I believe that we can rise to this and still continue to work hard to make something happen.
Jeff?
It's we were talking to Steve DeMeo about this, and I hate to keep harping on this 18-month deadline to build a project where you can have chip manufacturing. What kind of a timeline does that get us? He was saying from when they start construction to when a place would be ready, you're looking at 18 months to build it. So now we're talking mid-2018. What type of timeline are you guys on, and what are you hearing from the state as far as when you could actually find another company to come in here?
Well, I think, as Steve alluded to before, there's other companies that he is talking to and the state is talking to about that site. And Steve has said this many times, there's no company that can do it faster than 18 months, whether you're AMS or any other company. The timeline to build one of these facilities is 18 months. I think the benefit we have now is that so much work has been done on the site. We're not where we were 2 years ago, where we didn't have a permit. A lot of the infrastructure might not have been in place at that point. And I know the county executive's here now. He can talk about the infrastructure improvements that the county has made to bring that site up to where it is now, where it truly is a shovel-ready site. So I think the attractive thing about this site is, number one, there's funding attached to it, which wasn't there last year. And it's truly a shovel-ready site where you have the power, you have the water, you have the gas, all the things you need to do are there. So that is going to be beneficial in attracting another company because they know that timeline can be strictly adhered to.
And what has changed too, right? People have asked that. So the players have changed that were involved in this in Albany. That's important. The process has been altered, now being put in under the Department of Economic Development, the Empire State Development Corporation, with a different person like Howard Zemsky, who has that responsibility, who directly works for the governor now. That's all important too. Yes, we need to continue to monitor the funding. There could be an economic downturn. I mean, we can't guarantee and ensure all these things, but we're going to do our best to position the community. And I think AMS, speaking as they did about the community, recognizes that they really appreciated the work and the efforts that were being done locally, and they're not leaving. Like a lot of people were asking, well, how does this prevent maybe someone else from coming? Because they look at this and say, well, we don't want to go through this kind of ordeal or this process. Well, the difference is this company recognized that it wasn't really the fault of individuals here and would like to have done business here but couldn't because of that timetable sensitivity. And those players have been changed and the process has been altered. That's what's different.
I got to, and we'll bring in Anthony Picente, county executive. I got to ask, and just pull that mic nice and close if you could. I do have to ask. I mean, this is all on the governor. At the end of the day, he's made these appointments. This is all on him. Yeah. And how's he going to fix this?
Well, I think he's attempted to fix it. I mean, as the senator said, in changing the players, but I still think that could have been changed a lot sooner. And look, we can all be, armchair quarterbacks in terms of this, but we're in government. We've been involved in these projects. We've been involved in different things, and you're right. The buck stops there, and it has to. And so, The real problem was putting the economic development eggs in the basket of an area, and I said this I think weeks ago when we were here before, when a lot of other stuff was breaking loose. That look, academia is important, and it's significant to have those kind of investments and those kind of people involved. But when you have to build something, when you have to move financing for this project to the magnitude that this was, and have all these moving pieces, it can't be done by an institution that's charged with research and education, and it needed to be done in economic development a setting and in an economic development purview. And so, how do you fix it? Well, we get a company in here really soon, and I think as I walked in, you were talking about this, and both of them chimed in perfectly in terms of what's been taking place. Look, the other piece here now is you had a company, AMS, and I said this on Friday. There was a real company, a global leader that was looking at this site. So now you got all these other companies that we're sitting behind, and you've got all this progress being made. You've got these commitments going forward. You got the infrastructure, everything that they said. You have a tremendous advantage for the next company, even better than you did for AMS, because AMS we had to go through all these steps.
And you made improvements
and
up there.
Made improvements. And we're going to continue that. And the state has pledged that they would allow us to continue those improvements, and we're going to keep moving that money into the water, the sewers, the transmission lines, everything that needs to be done, so it will be more than a shovel-ready site that's just a hole.
I asked Assemblyman Brindisi, Senator Griffo, the question earlier, how do you say to people, because we now know that you guys knew this was falling to pieces, you've known, but we've talked, and we've talked about we're moving forward. I understand you have to put a positive face on, and you don't want to blow up any deals. I do get that. I understand. There's only so much you can tell us. But at the end of the day, there's a reality. We now know you weren't telling us the truth, and we were telling us we were moving forward.
It's not really. But
how do you convince the people to be able to say? How do you convince people to be able to believe in the future that you are telling us, you're giving it to us straight?
There are a couple things. We were telling the truth. It's only been about 3 weeks that we knew that AMS had decided officially, and nothing else.
Well, you never let on to us that this was in jeopardy.
But the other point is, it's like any other thing, Bill. You have the opportunity to make an end run and say, look, let's find out what those crucial aspects of why you want to pull this now, and let us correct it. And so we're given that opportunity.
Right.
The other point that people have to understand is, and we've said this repeatedly, and I know it gets lost, but it's fact. We all sign confidentiality agreements with companies for non-disclosure. There are points that we cannot say anything, especially when they are a public traded.
But I want you to really listen to my question.
Sure.
Not that you didn't, but I want to rephrase maybe. Maybe I'll say it. I understand.
Sure.
You can only tell us so much.
Right.
That's not my question.
Okay.
How do you convince the people that are sitting out there listening right now that don't care your reasons why you couldn't talk, don't care about the confidentiality? We've been let down once again. How do we, as a community, how do we trust again? How do we believe again? How do we keep this positive attitude? So it's not about your reasons for keeping information from us. It's just the fact that it was kept from us, and we now know. How do we go forward from there is my question. And it's for any of you guys to pipe in on.
Well, you want to go?
Well, I think a couple things are important to recognize. Number one, when we saw that there were problems, we did what we can locally here to try and bring it to the attention of the governor's office, to SUNY Poly, to push them forward. Ultimately, they are the decision makers when it comes to these projects and who controls the projects, not us. I think if it was up to us, we probably would have taken it out of the hands of SUNY Poly a long time ago. But it wasn't up to us. It was up to the governor to do that.
Right.
And he has to answer for why he why he picked the time period he did to take it away from them to put it over to Empire State Development. So people are going to have distrust. We've always had distrust in this area because we've been let down a number of times.
Right.
But recognize that we've done what we can, and we're going to continue to push forward to try and make this thing happen. And ultimately, there may not be that trust built again until we can actually deliver a chip fab facility in this area, which is something we're all committed to doing.
And talking about the over delivery, I mean, Joe, you you were probably the first, and I know that that Anthony as well reiterated what you had said is the 3,000 jobs. Wait a minute, step back. I think we're building this up a little too big, and turns out we were.
Absolutely. And if you go back to your show notes, you'd see those conversations took place. I think the county executive
recognize
said it
that
very well, and I think that's important, Bill, because yes, there's going to be critics and cynics as we talked about, but nobody lied here. Over the last 3 weeks, when this really surfaced, as you said, during the past, if we were trying to, we would be hiding right now, right? Nobody coming on.
I, for the record, didn't say you guys lied. Right. I just said you didn't give us the full truth, and I understand. You couldn't say some things. I get that.
2 points to that is the county, just to emphasize what the county executive said. First of all, it wasn't completely dead. It was on life support.
Right.
And there was an opportunity to potentially still bring this back to life. So what do you go out and say, hey, it's almost done here?
No, I get that.
What purpose does that solve?
I do understand that.
Right.
I understand.
So that's the point. And when you're talking about those 3 weeks, that's what happened.
I understand all of that. Please don't think you did what you had to do. I get it. But at the end of the day, the people still have to believe again.
And your point about being let down is something. I mean, being let down in the past has been let down because we didn't come through with anything, because we weren't granted, whether it was the amount of money, whether it was the award, whether it was a company. I mean, we had a company here. And I stressed this again on Friday, and I can't help but stress it more. This was a real global company. They weren't made up. Nothing here. The last 15 months, or back to August of 2015, this wasn't just a pipe dream.
Right.
This was a real project with a real company that was coming here, that visited here, that are on the global stage, that everybody knows. They're publicly traded. As I said, there was a screw up.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. Wasn't and look, it's not about saying don't blame us. I mean, the point is we have been involved in this from day one.
Could you guys have done anything differently? Could you have done? Looking back on it now,
I think looking back, though. Quite frankly and bluntly, if they had listened to us early on and moved it as we had suggested, perhaps we wouldn't be talking about it right now.
There is the general feeling, I got to tell you, and I know I have to break, and let's break first, but there is a general feeling that you don't want to protest too aggressively with this governor because you might find yourself without funding altogether. Would you agree with that, Assemblyman?
I think you would want to have that sensitivity with any governor. And there's a significant amount of money attached to this area. And the first thing that's on our minds is to not hurt the area.
Right.
So we're doing what we can, trying to be sensitive of certain personalities. There's
a lot of personalities.
There's a lot of personalities.
Yes,
and look, I wish it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
But that's the scenario that we live in right now. But ultimately, we could be out there calling him out. And I do sometimes, and I get in trouble for it.
Right.
But we could do that, and ultimately we have to be sensitive of the fact that it could hurt our constituents back home. So we have to be sensitive of that.
Yeah, and look, it's about. I mean, I think we pointed to what we saw was the problem.
Right.
Were the problems here, and I also think that it's a matter of whether it's calling out, and we've done that, and now it's time to move on. But the other point I'm concerned about is not so much about offending the governor as offending other companies that are looking at us. And I don't want them to look at an area that says we're just, especially locally, that we're pointing fingers or on the state level or in this level, and nobody's committed to doing what is the most important goal, and that is to bring a company here, to bring jobs, to grow the population. I mean, I think that's where I'm more concerned about.
I want to take some calls.
Don't worry about offending them.
Well, you guys all talked about getting punched in the gut. I think that was your line, and I think you said when you're punched in the gut, you take a deep breath, get your wind back in, and you plow forward. Obviously, that's what I think people expect you guys to do and hope that you're going to do.
That's what we're going to do.
All right. Sit tight. I want to take some calls because I have people calling in, and then talk about in a possibly in a constructive way what really is the future, what is the potential of all of this. We'll come back here. Quick break. Hold tight.